to welcome you back. This is another episode of Real Ass Affirmations, but it's going to be very different because we're doing a full video. So for everybody that's watching, you'll be able to see the chocolate face plus my beautiful guest that's going to be on. In addition to that, you'll also be able to, we have a little music going on in the background. So this is going to be different because we're actually interviewing someone. And most of the time you only get to hear me, but whenever we drop in, we do our little affirmation-ish, and we want to bring some people on that have listened to the podcast, that are loyal listeners, so that this way they get to express themselves and let you know how they're feeling, what they think about the podcast, and why you should listen. So I'm Chisa Penix Brown, your favorite mental wealth lifestylist. And my guest today is Armina. And listen, I know she has been a long-time listener, and I have just so many questions to just ask her in general. So welcome. How are you today, beautiful?
Hello, I am so happy to be here. You completely made my day. I know we've been waiting like months and months and months to meet, and so I'm just so grateful that we're here.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a wonderful day to be here. And so let me just let people know. So I have a company called Give It to the People, and Give It to the People is a company that focuses on women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, and BIPOC businesses. And so with that, what we do, Real Ass Affirmations, is kind of underneath the Give It to the People umbrella, because Give It to the People started after, well, I don't even know. Sometimes I feel like one started after the other. So I think technically Give It to the People started first, and then we did Real Ass Affirmations. But Real Ass Affirmations for everybody is the shit you need to say to get you through your day. And so when I started that podcast, I really wanted to empower people, give people confidence, and allow people to feel like they kind of had a friend online, right? Even if they didn't know you and all they were doing was listening to your voice. And so I want to know, first of all, give us a little bit of background about you and how you even came across the podcast in the first place.
Yeah, so yes, my name is Armina. So what I do is I'm a counselor. And I love to write, I love poetry, I love learning. How I came across your podcast was I was literally on Spotify, and I was looking up podcasts related to self-love. Actually. And I found one and I was listening to it. I'm like, this sounds way too basic, way too generic. There's nothing authentic, it just sounds like very scripted, And then I found yours, Real Ass Affirmations. I'm like, oh, there's a cuss word. And I'm like, oh, affirmations. Oh, I like that,
Okay.
So I clicked on it. And as I was listening in, I'm like, damn, like she's real professional, she's a boss woman. Like, look at her doing her thing. And I see, I started something that really drew me in is that you are very, very professional, right? But at the same time, you are yourself, right? And like the message to spread, and you talk in the way that I also feel like you would talk to a friend. And the message is so strong. And I'm just like, you know what? I really love this because you don't always have to talk as if you're a professor or talk like you're scripted, in order for people to listen to you. Like, no, like you are a businesswoman. You've done so much in your life and you're yourself. And so that's really what lured me in. And so topics like the one where it's like they looking where they at, those were yeah
Yeah.
Like all these beautiful ones, and Yeti, and I love the recent ones too, the silence and achievement, and the way that you explain things is really just so simple and to the point. And I will literally be listening to your podcast as I'm on my way to work. I'll be sharing your podcast on my story quite frequently. I'll send it to my friends. I'll send it to my cousin, even my sister, and just the shit that you got to say to get you through your day, the one related to Will Smith, the fuck around and find out.
That's still one of my favorites. I mean, honestly, and you know what? I wish, like, if I would love to meet Will Smith, because I think first of all, I love Will Smith anyway. Okay. He does remind me of my husband. I'm sure he probably might be a little bit more extroverted, but the thing about it is people can push you to a point, where you feel like you really need to reach out and touch someone, like literally. Now, I mean,
Mm,
as an overall kind of thing, I just think that, could it have been handled a little bit differently? Yes, but sometimes you do have to do those things, and
mhm.
so when I'm watching stuff and when I'm looking at things and I'm trying to see like how I feel about them and how they relate, like I don't really necessarily try to get as much into pop culture stuff because
Yeah.
that's kind of like I'm chasing so much. But that was one of them where I was just like, we need a podcast episode about this. Definitely. Now,
Mm.
with you being a counselor, what type of counseling do you do?
So I did get my bachelor's in psychology. I am really passionate about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed work. I specifically am a counselor for substance abuse. So I work with people who are in recovery for their addictions.
Mhm. And that's
It's really tough.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a
Hmm.
powerful thing to be able to do. Now, have
Yeah.
you found, because I know one of the organizations I want to work with is NAMI. I had a young lady contact
Mm.
me from NAMI, and I'm very much into, it's just been a lot of stuff. Like when you think about your life and all of the different things that you've gone to, I feel like you get drawn to certain things, especially when it's your profession, like something that you have to give of yourself in order to be able to do that, right? And so, when I think about that, I think about the fact that she reached out to me because she had a person that she was counseling, right? And she was like,
Mm.
she loved this particular podcast episode, and she wanted to let me know that. And I'm like, that's a really great thing. Do you find that any of these messages then translate over into like your real life, like when you're having to counsel people too?
100%. Quite honestly, I've noticed a lot of the work that I've done, you kind of, the textbook didn't really teach you, right? They
Mm-hmm.
say that, when you work with people in addiction, like this is the population that is the most challenging to work with. The turnover rate is so high, burnout, compassion fatigue, is through the roof. And it got to me, and the thing that I learned is I would observe other counselors and I'd be like, okay, how do I find the balance between, the professional, the strict, laying it down, going by the book, while at the same time being approachable, being personable, being someone that they can open up to outside of that. And I could not find that balance for a year.
Oh wow.
So it was like I became severely depressed. I wasn't eating, my hair was falling out just because I couldn't find the way. And then with certain podcasts you would have, such as boundaries, and taking a look at empathy, I would think to myself, oh, well, empathy is the way, many of them have not experienced it, they haven't received it from their social supports or people on the outside, especially with the stigma.
Yes.
And so I would think, okay, well, let me provide that, let me show them. And, it would be, I realized one of my triggers is manipulation. And that is something you have to navigate a lot in the field.
Mm,
And so then I had to learn boundaries and how to be firm while at the same time being my authentic self.
yeah.
And you've also helped me with that too. And so how do you navigate both?
Yeah.
And listening to your podcast is certainly really, really helpful. Especially the one where you say, I'm just doing my job,
That's it.
that
Because
one, people are
yeah,
watching you, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. But do you find, and I think that, just segueing from I'm just doing my job, sometimes
Sure.
I think that people want you to, or maybe it's not even people, it could be you yourself. Sometimes you bring those things home with you. And so it's just like, I know for me, I have to set a boundary, and it's certain things where people will be like, well, can you do this? And I'm just like, I could, but that might not be my gift right now.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing what you have to take on yourself, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that you may feel too empathetic. You may feel, that you want to help more. But I think, once we get to a certain point, we have to kind of look at the fact of, are people actually helping themselves?
Yeah.
And I know addiction can be, different, I mean, because you never know why a person got into addiction, how they even started in the first place. But
Right.
I mean, each person is still responsible for themselves. And so we, as the people
Right.
who are in any way, shape, or form counseling other people, whether it's through a podcast or whether it's you physically being in the room, we have to realize that we have to protect ourselves too, because then we have to go get counseling. Then we need somebody else to check on us to try to see about
Mm-hmm.
that. Now, how do you feel like, or what helped you kind of get a little bit out of that depression? Because the thing about depression is, it's not like it's just going to go away all the time. It's still going to be there in bouts, and it'll come up at times that you don't expect it. But how do you feel like you helped yourself to kind of get out of depression and get back to a state where you could be helpful to others?
A lot of it, I heard this quote once that it kind of went along the lines of, boundaries without empathy is self-destruction.
Oh.
And that's really how it applied to me. Like I tried so hard, like relating to the achievement and whatnot. Like I went above and beyond to help, and my coworkers would even tell me, Armina, like you're doing too much. Armina, like you are literally going to like kill yourself staying after hours. All you do is work. I would be fully immersed in that to the extent to which I wouldn't have a social life.
Oh.
I wouldn't know what to do outside of work. I was just fully immersed, and I became more of like a perfectionist because I had to prove myself, and it's like the lush move.
Mhm.
We ain't got nothing to prove,
Nothing to
right? And
prove.
so
That's
that
right.
would really help humble me. And so what helped is, therapy, and also opening up to other people, because I have to my coworkers and people who understand, because I have never been somebody who silences myself or who keeps quiet on how I feel. I've always been outspoken, even when I was at my worst. So to answer your question, what helped is just being really honest about how I feel, because it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I'm fine. I could do this. And then you hit rock bottom and you're like, oh my God, like I want to quit or I want to do this. But then anyway, if you don't find a way to deal with certain issues in the current job that you have, I
Mhm.
learned that it's going to come back in another job. And if you
Yep.
keep bouncing job to job, the lesson is still there for you to learn. And if you
Mhm.
just keep running and avoiding, it's just going to be repeated patterns and cycles. So just learning how to coexist with certain things and knowing like what's in my control and what isn't, because that's been so hard for me to accept.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So finally being able to just accept. I think acceptance was a really big thing for me, because so much like I just couldn't,
Yeah.
and it took a toll on me.
Yeah, but I
So,
like what you said. And I mean, I feel like what you just said, I'm thinking in my mind, it could be a whole nother podcast episode because
hmm,
the common denominator is you. Like, it doesn't matter. You keep
hmm,
switching jobs, you keep switching relationships or whatever, but you keep feeling the exact same way, then that means it's something that's going on with you that is not everybody
hmm,
else. And I think we have to just kind of realize that and just be accountable to ourselves to say, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What can I fix? What can I make better? And for me, when I went through a whole bunch of stuff and, had to do some therapy, I thought about my biggest thing was quality of life. I want to be
hmm,
happy every day. Now, that does not mean I'm going to be bouncing off the roof or whatever like that. But and
hmm,
even just as recent as yesterday, I had a migraine almost all day
hmm,
yesterday, and I had to have a mental health day. Okay. But at the end of the night, because it didn't even stop till like around 8 o'clock at night, which is totally ridiculous. But neither here nor
hmm,
there, I said, okay, so what's good? I didn't have to. I did miss one call. Okay. It just happened. Life is like that sometimes. I'll reschedule it. But outside of that, I had stuff done. I had things
hmm,
scheduled. I could do it just because of the flexibility that I've built into my life. And for like the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about taking that time off because I knew I needed
hmm,
that time off. And I also said to myself, now when I get up tomorrow morning, I'm going to be fine. Everything is going to be okay. What happened? Got up
hmm,
today and everything is like rainbows and sunshine, and everything is
hmm,
going according to a time schedule. And I'm back to being myself. And so I think we just have to realize that every day is not going to be rainbows and sunshine. And we do have to have those dark times or those
yeah,
times where I feel like God sits me down. I feel like he's like, you're doing too much, right? So what
yeah,
I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it so you don't feel like you can function the way that you used to.
hmm,
That one day, it was like a reset. You know what I mean? And so I think honestly, and this may not be the best way to look at depression, but let's look at it like this. We go through all of that so that this way, yeah, we feel bad, but we know how good it feels to feel good, right? When
yeah,
you look at how you've been in the past with depression, and then you can look at yourself now, it's like,
hmm,
oh, look what I did. Like I was able to pull myself out of that. And even if you had help, from an outside
right,
entity, you can look at what you did in the past and you can really be like, I remember when. And now
hmm,
you have a way to kind of get through it. So now that you're through it, and and like I said, depression does come back, so it's not like it's never going to happen again. But and you're looking at things. What are some of the things that maybe you do to kind of to improve from where you were, right? So it's now that you're
hmm,
not just focused on work all the time, but what's some of the
right.
things that you decided to add into your life?
That's such a great question. Thanks for asking me. If it's one thing I've noticed, and I've felt this way about spirituality and re- I know I might segue, but it does connect and religion, right? Because, but it's like I would, I feel very uncomfortable feeling like a hypocrite, right? Like when
Yeah.
I counsel groups, when I do like counseling groups, I teach like interpersonal skills, right? I'll teach, emotion regulation. I'll teach mindfulness, topics like that, social support, self improvement, and everything that I teach, I hold myself accountable to apply because we are models of it too. They're looking at us to see what do these skills actually look like,
Mm,
and so also apologizing is really important. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a professional or you have X, Y, and Z degrees or this many experiences. It doesn't matter. Like, if you don't know how to work with people, all of that is out the door. It doesn't even matter. And so mindfulness and meditation, because one of my goals for the year is clarity. And you mentioned that was your goal. Did you say last year or something?
last year,
Or
clarity and calm, both of those,
yeah, and
because
and
it's, you know,
calm.
yes.
And so my biggest thing is, how do I find ways to stay calm? Because I realize, like, I can get very reactive and impulsive if a crisis occurs on the spot. And that's something that with experience and with time you have to learn how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of pause and
Mm-hmm.
silence and like stepping away, that's really helpful. And coping skills like healthy distractions, that's kind of what I call them, whether it's like going for a drive if I find my anxiety is through the roof.
Right.
And I realize you cannot make decisions when you are very, very anxious or very depressed or just really confused or angry. You just can't. You have
Mhm.
to find a way to do something to remain calm. And because when you're calm, you're able to think more clearly and
Yes.
reflect more clearly. And so journaling has been my thing. And I tell them, I'm like, y'all, my coping skills are journaling and going on walks, being out in nature, because being surrounded by the world, it really helps me get out of my head. Whereas if I isolate, if I'm in my room constantly, it feeds into it,
Yeah, and
you
it's a
know.
natural thing. I love that you said that because one of the things that I could say, in having depression and having anxiety, is that sunlight. I swear
Mhm.
to you, your mood will change. And if it's just because it's bright, and you need to be like, okay, it's too much. But the sunlight, when they say the vitamin D that comes from the sun, and even if you think about it, I know this is about to sound crazy, but Superman, right? When Superman needs to recharge, Superman goes
Mm,
to the sun, right? So it's like it's something about the energy and being out in nature that does it for me. And so
mm.
internally, like if I'm inside the house, that's when I started buying flowers because I felt like that
Oh.
was my like nature way. Now I have killed a bunch of plants. I just
Me too.
really, I used to be good with plants, but I think it's the amount of light that comes in and where the light is. So I need more natural light. But outside of that, the flowers, that has been like my let me look over there. Those are pretty. That's been the thing that gave me like nature on the inside, right? Was to have something that was flowers. And then outside of that, just going outside. So I think that with yours, to me, it makes sense because that's something that's free. You can walk outside for free. I mean, you can sit outside, and even people don't realize, go outside, sit on a park bench
Yeah,
and just sit there 20, 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? 15 minutes if that's all you have. But sometimes that little bit can re energize you, and not talking to somebody, like
you're
just
right.
being with your own thoughts can be a really good thing. Now, with this, one of the things is I know that you shared the podcast with other people, but what if people
Mm.
said to you about like, oh girl, that was a good podcast? Like, what did they say? I know this is like my
No, no, good
that part,
question.
but I want to know that part too.
They would say, oh, like, some that I could come up with is, oh my God, like, I love the way that she explained it, or this is awesome, or, like, I can, like, with my sister, when I showed the they looking, like the whispering, and, she would be like, oh my God, like, that makes sense. Like, I experienced that too. So
Mhm.
the way that you explain things and apply it in your life, it makes it so much more relatable to us.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my friends can most definitely relate. And even when I'll put it in my story, like, I'll get like those hearts that will
Hmm.
pop up. And I just think it's just, the affirmations are really important, right? Because you could always Google an affirmation and it's just
Yeah.
like, but then it's like, okay, well, how do you make it your own? And sometimes you got to really look in the mirror. Like, I think you did this with affirmation ish with one of your friends who joined in.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes you can look in the mirror, and I'll even tell my clients this. I'm like, when we talk about affirmations, you can literally look at yourself in the mirror and be like, you're the shit. Or like, you are a bad bitch. Like,
Yes.
and that's an affirmation. Like,
It is.
for
It
real.
is. I
Yeah.
live by that. Yes. Because you know what? I think that you got to be your biggest cheerleader, and I realize, and I always, like when people talk about privilege, I think I'm privileged to have the life that I have. I mean, and I'm not saying everything is perfect, right? But there are people that don't have, there are people that have more. I'm happy with what I have, right? And so when I'm looking at that, I'm also looking at the fact of, well, what if there isn't somebody there to hype you up? Like, you need to hype yourself up. And that's where that confidence part comes in. And I want people to feel like they can do that for themselves, because sometimes there's nobody else there to do it for you, and then sometimes people don't realize the people that are there are not necessarily in their corner the way that they think they should be in their corner. So, and I've had that happen where people are like, oh yeah, that's great. And it's just like, so you're not more hyped up and more happy about that?
Right.
And then it's like, well, I need a certain level of hyped upness. So let me do it for myself. Like, let me be
Yeah.
me. And I'm glad that it's definitely been able to help you. And so if you said to people, you say, listen, this is the reason you should listen to this podcast, what would your reason be? Give me that reason. They've never heard it before. They don't know anything about real ass affirmations. So you can either maybe tell us like your favorite one or just why they should listen.
Ooh. I'm gonna have to wait a quick moment. Because there's so much I would say, right? But if you're asking me to pick one, like one reason for people to listen in, it's like, honestly, with your podcast, I think the main thing is like, because you talk about so many different things when it comes to like, you with your messages, you apply it to businesses with jobs, you apply it to relationships, you apply it to friendships and coworkers, a lot, all of this, and with yourself. And so, it just helps. I'll be like, hey, like if you feel like no one really understands, or if you feel like you're just kind of like struggling by yourself, like listen to this podcast, like the way that she explains it makes a whole lot of sense. And I hope that this can offer you some clarity with what you're going through.
Oh, I love
So yeah. Because I mean, and sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, damn, like this episode is 6 minutes. Like she could make this so much longer.
Longer. Okay. All right. I take that. Noted.
No, it's a big compliment, because there's just so much that can be said, and but as you mentioned, like based on the time that people have in their day, right, like that 7 minutes can be, like that's enough for me to register that information and just cruise through my day, and I think that is the first thing that comes to mind. Let me do a little bit more of that today. Send some people some podcasts, and then we'll see what they have to say. And I'll give you the receipts. How about that?
No, that's wonderful. And you know what? I love it. And that's why, for me, and I don't do this as much as I probably should, but I'm gonna, invest in doing it more, because I feel like, and this is just my feeling, a lot of times when people get on these platforms, and I feel like the word influencer is becoming something that is kind of, to me, turning into a negative. I mean, I don't want it to ever do that, because I understand what the point of influence is. And I feel like we all have influence on somebody in some way, shape, or form, right? But I think that once people get so big, it's like, oh, I can't be bothered with you, right? And I even see people that, maybe have less, but I don't know. So I just kind of look at the fact of, I want to know what my people think, you know what I mean? And when I think about the fact that, and you're a perfect representation, when I think about the fact that in my mind, I originally created this for, and I'm just honest, Black women who look like me, right? When I see that it is affecting everybody else who doesn't look like me, who doesn't come from the same background, who just understands that the message is there, to me, that is like one of the most ultimate compliments, because it's like, everybody is getting into it, right? And so just the way that I think and I talk and stuff, I think that it's so good that so many different people are being able to be a part of this, right? Because now we all have this like ecosystem of self-love and confidence and empathy for each other, right? And I think that to me, that's like one of the best things. So when I see, like, I'll look at stats and stuff and charts, and they'll be like, oh, it's in this country and that country. And I'm like, what? Okay, y'all listening over there. All right. Well, you better listen in whatever country it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Like, wow. And sometimes you just don't realize the impact. And that's why I always want people to be able to talk out, why I love doing this, because now I get your insight to see what you think and how it helped you. And to me, that's an important factor. Like, I think if more people did that and paid attention to who was actually listening, who was actually watching, then it'd be a better world, because now you really know real honest feedback from people, and it's touching. Like when I get a message, I'm like, oh, thanks. Like, I don't think you understand like how special that is to me, for a person to take the time out of their day to send a message and say that they like something. That is important. And it's kind of like that human touch, but it's online.
Yeah.
It's important. It really is. So I thank you for listening, and I appreciate it. Now, is there anything you want to leave the people with today? Anything about you? Anything about Real Ass Affirmations? What are you thinking?
Well, Real Ass Affirmations, like if you are at a place where if you feel like you don't, like if you are somebody that's like constantly seeking validation and it doesn't come from a place of just loving attention, but comes from a place of like, I'm really anxious. I don't know if I'm doing okay. Can somebody tell me I'm doing okay? Just to kind of alleviate my stress. Like, I feel like when I listen to your podcast, it's like like it helps me relax actually, because it's almost like I'm talking to, as you mentioned at the beginning, it's like talking to a friend, and I've even shared your podcast with my therapist. I'm like, look at how she explains this. I'd be like, look, we talked about this. Look at how she explains it. Like this makes sense, and it's just like, I think accessibility is also very, very important, just to spread the message to whoever, has the opportunity to listen. Like I'll be listening to your podcast while I'm doing my eyebrows, I'll be listening to it while I'm, driving like on the road, like it's just like, it's not only entertainment, it's just healing, listening to your podcasts are healing. So, I could listen to them on and off, like, and it just won't get old, like I'll be listening and I'll be laughing and giggling to myself, or I'll just be like, damn, like you right. You explain things in a way that is memorable. And I think that is really so important, because we're fed so much information and like on the media, on social media, or just people just talk so much, so it can just be like, wait, what'd they say? Or, oh, I don't even remember. But when I listen to your podcast, it's something to remember. Like it really does leave a mark on me. And so I'm just like, listen to her, and, yeah, I mean, I could hype you up all day, it's just
No,
one
I
of those
love
things
it.
where yeah, like your words are just so timeless, and you say, hey, like I'm not going to say anything to you that I wouldn't say to myself. And I
No.
think that's really awesome, because you are your authentic self. And like for somebody who's struggling in their deep depression or high anxiety, like if you start, because you lose yourself, right? And because it takes over you. And so to see like, oh, there's this person out there who is authentically themselves, and they do not seek validation. They don't care what other people think. They're just like, oh, okay, like this is me. If you don't like it, okay, because eventually you're gonna find someone who likes you the way that you are, and that you feel like you don't have to change or hide yourself, but you are very shameless and unapologetic, and you just like, you're a bad bitch, like, and it's just like, it helps you feel that way too, even if you don't feel that way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I don't
No,
know. Does that make sense?
I
Yeah.
know exactly what you mean, and you don't even understand. Like, I really love it. I appreciate everything, and you and everybody that listens. And the thing is, for people who are watching, or if you're listening, we've been trying to get together for more than 6 months, and it just the timing wasn't right, right? You know what I'm saying? And so now being able to do this and being able to set time aside and being able to talk and have this conversation, to me, I'm really glad. And of course, it happened when it was supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
So now, we have this message that we can share with the world. So you guys that are watching, you get to see how beautiful we are, and you see how eyebrows is not playing.
They're not playing. I did them last night.
Listen, keep on eyebrow, honey. You better keep that face done. I'm telling you, right? I love it.
And
I
you
love
gotta
it.
do your hair. Your hair is always so many different colors. I love how you
Oh
say you
yeah.
go to the barber shop, you take care of yourself. You're like, on Wednesdays, I don't see clients.
No,
You
listen.
know.
Look, the fact that she
Hmm.
knows that's what I'm telling you. Like that let you know
See,
that's my people right there, right? Like because
right.
it's like that's your time. So give yourself time. Make time for yourself in your day, in your week. And all of those messages are important. So everybody, if you are listening to Real Ass Affirmations, thank you so much for listening. Keep on out, supporting, and just know that we're going to keep giving you great episodes, and we'll be doing some more things that will be visual for you to be able to see as well. So, Armina, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. And keep listening because I got some good shit coming up. I promise you
Of
that.
course you do. And everybody listening to, talk to Chisa. I was literally in the parking lot of my job a year ago and I saw that you followed me and I'm like, oh my God, she followed me? What? And that made my day and I was shook. And so
Oh wow!
like Chisa can do that. So
Oh
talk
my
to her.
goodness!
When she says
Look,
leave a message, like she's not playing. She's not just lying. Like
no, I
she's
mean
not
it.
lying.
Yeah, I mean, leave a message, like for real. And I mean, I just want people to be able to communicate. And so, we have some things that'll be coming up because I realize too that people sometimes need more, right? And so the podcast is there and it's a catalyst for moving you forward. But what if you do need somebody to talk to? You know what I'm saying? And so being able to bring that into what we're going to do going forward is something that I think is important. And then maybe even being able to see people's faces, can be something like in real time, where it's live and
Yeah.
we can have these conversations. And so we have some things that are coming up. And so just know that it's more stuff always coming. And for everybody that's watching, everybody that's listening, make sure you always show up and show out, that you continue to give it to the people. And that's on Real Ass Affirmations.
And that's on Real Ass Affirmations. Thank you for doing
Yes.
all the work that you do.
Thank
You've been so
you.
influential. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Never
you.
stop what you're doing.
Listen, and you keep on working because I know the people need you. So definitely. And mind you, guys, we're not even on the same time zone or anything. We just make it happen. Okay. So everybody out there, we'll see you on the next episode, and you'll hear us on the next episode on Real Ass Affirmations. Bye.
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 Thank you.